There is a signal in the United States Navy that every military commander in the world knows how to read. One carrier means presence. America is watching. Two carriers means pressure. America is serious. Three carriers means something else entirely. Three carriers means America has made a decision. Right now, in March 2026, the United States is sending a third aircraft carrier to the Middle East. The USS George H.W. Bush completed its final deployment certification exercises off the coast of Virginia on March 5th. It is preparing to depart Norfolk before the end of the month. When it arrives, the United States will have three carrier strike groups operating simultaneously across the Gulf, the Red Sea, and the Arabian Sea. The USS Abraham Lincoln in the northern Arabian Sea, off the coast of Oman, launching strikes under Operation Epic Fury. The USS Gerald R. Ford, having passed through the Suez Canal and entered the Red Sea after 200 days of deployment. And the Bush on its way to complete the triangle. More than 200 aircraft at sea, hundreds of Tomahawk cruise missiles across dozens of warships. A combined strike capacity that the Iranian military has no credible answer to. The Center for Strategic and International Studies has described the current American military concentration in the Middle East as the largest since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. The last time the United States assembled something comparable was when 5 carrier battle groups gathered for Operation Iraqi Freedom. Iran knows exactly what 3 carriers mean, and that is precisely why this is happening. To understand why 3 carriers carry this specific kind of weight, you need to understand how the United States Navy actually works. America operates 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. 11 sounds like a lot, but at any given moment, those 11 ships are distributed across a rotation that keeps roughly 1/3 deployed, 1/3 preparing to deploy, and 1/3 in maintenance or scheduled repair. The realistic number of carriers available for a sudden crisis response is somewhere between 3 and 5, and even that number creates enormous strain across the entire fleet. Deploying 3 carriers to a single theater is not a decision made lightly. It pulls assets away from everywhere else. The Pacific, where China is watching every move. The Atlantic, the deterrence missions that keep allies confident and adversaries uncertain. When 3 carriers concentrate in one place, every other theater feels the absence. That is precisely why the 3-carrier signal carries such weight. It is not just a demonstration of firepower, it is a demonstration of commitment so significant that it creates real strategic risk elsewhere. The message it sends is not simply that the United States has the capability to strike. The message is that the United States is willing to absorb the strategic cost of sustaining that capability in one theater, indefinitely, for as long as it takes. Iran's military planners understand this distinction. They have studied American doctrine, deployment patterns, and political thresholds for decades. They know the rotation cycles. They know what each level of force projection represents. When 2 carriers arrived in January and February of 2026, it was serious. When a third begins its transit east, it crosses into a different category entirely. The story of how 3 carriers came to converge on the Middle East in early 2026 does not begin with a military decision. It begins with protests in a marketplace. On December 28, 2025, demonstrations erupted in Tehran's Grand Bazaar. Shopkeepers furious about a collapse in Iran's currency, soaring inflation, and deteriorating living standards took to the streets. The rial had lost more than 40% of its value in the preceding 6 months. Prices for basic food and medicine had become impossible for ordinary families to absorb. Within days, the protests had spread to more than a dozen cities: Tabriz, Isfahan, Mashhad, Ahvaz. Hundreds of thousands of people were in the streets. Iran's government responded with force. By January 8, 2026, the regime had cut all internet access to the country. Human Rights Watch documented a coordinated escalation in the use of lethal force, with protesters and bystanders shot in the head and torso. The death toll became deeply contested because of the communications blackout. Iran's government reported 3,117 dead. Human rights organizations tracking reports coming out of the country counted at least 6,126, while acknowledging that the true number could not be independently verified. The United States responded with sanctions and warnings, and then with something more significant. Speaking to Iranian protesters directly at an event in Detroit, President Trump told them to keep protesting and said that help was on its way. That phrase was not a diplomatic statement. It was a signal, a declaration that the United States was actively considering intervention. And Iran's military, which had already watched its nuclear sites struck in Operation Midnight Hammer, in June 2025, began preparing for the possibility that another American military operation was imminent. Both countries began moving forces into position. The United States quietly began building the largest military concentration in the Middle East in 2 decades. Iran's Revolutionary Guard commander announced publicly that Iran was more ready than ever, with its finger on the trigger. Iran's foreign minister published an op-ed warning that Tehran would fire back with everything it had if attacked. The language on both sides had crossed from deterrence into the vocabulary of imminent war. On February 28, 2026, the strikes happened. The United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury, joint strikes against Iranian nuclear sites, missile production facilities, and command infrastructure across multiple Iranian cities. U.S. bombers struck more than 200 targets across Iran in a 72-hour period. The USS Abraham Lincoln provided the primary naval strike platform from the Arabian Sea. It had been operating roughly 700 kilometers from the Iranian coast, close enough for its aircraft to execute strike missions, but distant enough to reduce exposure to Iran's extensive coastal anti-ship missile batteries. The carrier's strike group was operating in the northern Arabian Sea off Oman when the operation launched. Its fighter jets had already demonstrated their willingness to engage. In early February, one of the Lincoln's aircraft had shot down an Iranian drone that was described by CENTCOM as aggressively approaching the carrier group. That engagement was a preview of what was coming. When the strikes began on February 28th, the USS Spruance, a destroyer assigned to the Lincoln strike group, fired Tomahawk cruise missiles in support of the operation. The Lincoln's air wing was launching sorties continuously. The carrier was operating as a mobile airfield in one of the most contested stretches of ocean in the world. Within hours of the operation beginning, the United States also struck the Shahid Bagheri, Iran's newly commissioned drone carrier. Iran had introduced the Shahid Bagheri just weeks earlier, presenting it at a ceremony in the Persian Gulf as a symbol of its growing naval capability. The United States destroyed it within hours of launching the operation it was designed to complicate. The message was deliberate and precise. The carrier that Iran built to project power was gone before it could be used. Iran's response to the strikes on its territory was to claim it had destroyed the Abraham Lincoln. On March 1, 2026, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps released a statement claiming that the USS Abraham Lincoln had been struck by 4 ballistic missiles. Iranian state media ran the story repeatedly. Tehran Times published footage that it claimed showed anti-ship missile launches from Iranian coastal batteries toward the carrier group. 5 days in a row, Iranian outlets repeated and amplified the claim. The United States Central Command responded directly and publicly. CENTCOM published a statement on its official channels and social media. The Lincoln was not hit. The missiles launched did not even come close. The Lincoln continues to launch aircraft in support of CENTCOM's relentless campaign. The wording was chosen carefully, not just a denial, but a specific counter-narrative. The only carrier that has been hit is the Shahid Bagheri, Iran's carrier, struck by the United States within hours of the operation beginning. PolitiFact examined the videos circulated by Iranian outlets and found them to be fabricated. The ship details in the footage were inconsistent with the actual USS Abraham Lincoln. The planes visible in one video had unrealistic shapes that did not match any aircraft operated by the U.S. Navy. The accounts that originally posted the material were taken down before verification could be completed. The Iranian information campaign surrounding the Abraham Lincoln was a strategic communication operation. Iran needed to tell its domestic audience and its regional proxies that it had struck back, that the American carrier had been hit, that the most powerful symbol of American naval dominance in the region had been wounded. It had not been wounded. It was launching aircraft. But the fact that Iran attempted to claim a strike on the carrier reveals something important about how Iran thinks about carriers. The carrier is not just a weapon to them, it is a symbol. Claiming to have struck it is a propaganda victory, even without any actual military effect. This is how deeply the aircraft carrier has embedded itself in the symbolic language of American power in the region. 3 days after the initial strikes, Iran escalated. A strike attributed to Iranian-backed forces hit a residential building in Manama, Bahrain, wounding 8 people. Drone attacks targeted Abu Dhabi, forcing a state oil company to shut down a refinery temporarily. Iran fired 8 separate missile salvos at Israel, causing moderate injuries and significant property damage. Hezbollah launched missile attacks from Lebanon, wounding 16 people and damaging civilian infrastructure. The most significant single event in terms of American casualties came in the form of attacks on U.S. bases in Bahrain and the UAE. CENTCOM confirmed that 3 U.S. service members were killed in action and 5 were seriously wounded during the period following the initial strikes. The identities of the fallen were withheld pending notification of families. 3 Americans killed, 5 seriously wounded. In combat operations, the American public had only a partial understanding of. This is the context in which the third carrier is arriving. The war that Iran said it would fight if attacked is being fought. The proxies Iran spent decades funding and arming are engaged. Iranian missiles are flying. American sailors are dying. And the United States is responding not by pulling back, but by sending more. Here is what 3 carriers actually make possible that 2 cannot. A single carrier in surge operations can generate more than 100 combat sorties in a 24-hour period. The aircraft cycle continuously, landing and rearming and launching again. The tempo is extraordinary and exhausting, and it can only be maintained for a limited number of days before the crew and the aircraft need to rest. With 3 carriers operating in different sectors of the region, the United States can sustain continuous operations without pause. When the Lincoln's air wing rests, the Ford is launching. When the Ford cycles down for maintenance, the Bush is in position. The coverage is overlapping and relentless. There is no window of reduced presence that Iran can exploit. The geographic distribution also matters enormously. Iran's strategy has always involved multiple vectors simultaneously. Coastal missiles threatening ships in the Gulf of Oman. Proxy forces threatening American bases in the Gulf states. Threats to close the Strait of Hormuz, through which roughly 1/5 of the world's oil supply passes every day. A single carrier strike group, no matter how powerful, cannot simultaneously cover the Eastern Mediterranean, the Red Sea, the Arabian Sea, and the Persian Gulf approaches. 3 carriers divide the problem. The Ford covers the Mediterranean and the Upper Red Sea, threatening any Iranian naval movements through the Gulf of Aden. The Lincoln covers the Arabian Sea and the southern approaches to the Strait of Hormuz. The incoming Bush covers the Eastern Gulf and provides the rotation flexibility that allows the other 2 to maintain their positions without exhausting their crews. And then there is the function that does not appear in any operational briefing, but is understood by every commander and every admiral involved. The third carrier is a statement about will. Iran has been betting since the initial strikes that American political resolve is limited, that the United States will conduct a punitive campaign and then look for a diplomatic exit, that the cost of sustained operations, the casualties, the fuel and ordnance expenditure, the strain on carrier rotation, will eventually push Washington toward a negotiated settlement that Iran can survive. Every time an American carrier left the Persian Gulf region in the past decade, Iran's military read it as confirmation of this theory. American power comes, makes noise, and eventually goes home. The region belongs to those who stay. The third carrier is the answer to that theory. It says the resolve has not softened. It says the United States is prepared to sustain this campaign, not for days or weeks, but for as long as necessary. And it says that the carrier, which Iran has spent 30 years and enormous national treasure developing weapons to defeat, is not going anywhere. The cost of this posture is real and worth understanding clearly. The USS Gerald R. Ford has now been forward deployed for more than 200 days. Extended deployments at this tempo affect crew readiness, compress maintenance schedules, and push back the availability of the ship for future commitments. The Ford is one of the Navy's newest and most capable carriers. Having it deployed for 200 days in a combat zone represents an extraordinary consumption of one of America's most valuable military assets. The Abraham Lincoln was quietly rerouted to the Middle East from what was originally announced as a Pacific deployment. It left San Diego in November for the Indo-Pacific region and was redirected to the Arabian Sea as the crisis with Iran escalated. Every day the Lincoln spends in the Arabian Sea is a day it is not in the Pacific, where China is watching the carrier rotation carefully and drawing its own conclusions about American capacity. The Bush's departure from Norfolk means the Atlantic loses one of its primary naval assets for the duration of the deployment. European allies who rely on American carrier presence in the Mediterranean as a deterrent against Russian naval activity will notice the absence. The CSIS analysis published in February 2026 was explicit about the limitations of the current force even at its unprecedented scale. The assembled force lacks the Marines and Special Operations capabilities needed for ground operations. It lacks the logistics infrastructure for an extended air campaign measured in months rather than weeks. It is a force built for punitive strikes and protection of allies, not for the kind of campaign that ends with a changed government in Tehran. That limitation is actually central to the strategic logic of three carriers. The signal the United States is sending is not that it intends to invade Iran. It is that it can continue to strike Iranian military infrastructure from the sea indefinitely, without occupying territory, without depending on regional bases that Gulf allies have been reluctant to offer for strikes, and without the kind of open-ended ground commitment that would require a prolonged political debate in Washington. Maximum military pressure at manageable political cost. That is the doctrine that three carriers in the Middle East represents. When the USS George H.W. Bush departs Norfolk and begins its transit east, it will complete a triangle that has not been assembled in this region in more than 20 years. One carrier at the throat of the Arabian Sea. One carrier in the Red Sea, the waterway that connects the Mediterranean to the Indian Ocean. One carrier at the Gulf approach, covering the strait that Iran has threatened to close. Iran fired 5 days of propaganda claiming it had sunk the Abraham Lincoln. The Lincoln was launching aircraft the entire time. Iran claimed its coastal missiles were a match for American naval power. The Shahid Bagheri, Iran's own carrier, was destroyed within hours of the operation beginning. Iran has spent 30 years building the military doctrine, the missiles, and the proxies it believed would make American carriers too expensive to deploy in its neighborhood. 3 carriers are on their way. The answer to the question Iran has been asking since it first watched American carriers operating off its shores has not changed. Nothing makes them leave. This is Naval Depth. Subscribe and stay with us as this story continues to develop.